Hello, and thank you for joining us for this wonderful panel discussion. This is one of 6 panel discussions that is part of the Women in AI Forum. It is a global perspective of AI from 24 women that are around the world. Today's panel discussion is focused on justice, which is going to cover governance and ethical innovation in the space of AI. And I'm very privileged to be in the presence of these 3 lovely women that have deep expertise in the space of AI and privacy and intellectual property and human rights. I'll start with Clara. Clara Lynn Hawking is head of AI at Globe Educate. She leads the charge in implementing AI within a complex multinational environment within 12 countries and impacting the lives of 40,000 children worldwide, or better said, students, because some of them are not kids. Um, with her diverse background in computer science, political psychology, philosophy, theology, and ethics, she has greatly contributed to the intersection of AI and educational technology, and as a fellow in the Center for AI and Digital Policy. Just a quick question, Clara, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Barcelona, Spain today, so where it is sunny after some rainy days, and I'm very, very happy that you have put together this forum. So very, very grateful that we all have an opportunity to meet in this forum and discuss these important things. Thank you for that, Joachim.
You're welcome. Awar Umbiro, she is the head of data protection at South End Tech Limited. She is a distinguished legal professional and advocate of the High Court of Kenya and brings a wealth of experience in regulatory and legal compliance. She has a special focus on areas such as data protection, privacy, cybersecurity, and digital policy. Awar presently focuses her razor-sharp wits to internet and AI governance policy efforts, safeguarding data and ensuring compliance. Awar, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Nairobi, Kenya, and I'd also like to thank you for organizing this wonderful interactive forum.
Thank you for joining us. Soon to join us is Sharola Akoth Odipo. She is the founder of Women in AI Africa, a nonprofit organization bridging the gender gap in the booming field of AI in Africa. WIA is an organization that empowers women across Africa through a number of social and educational programs. It is an organization that recently launched an AI system called EvaCare, and it is designed by women for women to assist women through pregnancy and into the early phase of parenthood. Sharola is also founder and managing partner of Akoth Odipo Law, and she advises clients through a number of different services. So with that, I would invite you guys or gals to introduce yourselves and give me in your own words a little bit of your background and experience. Um, Awar or Clara, if you'd like to start.
Award, would you like to start or to make the rotation?
All right. Like Mr. Melara stated, my name is Jenna Worumbiro. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I'm also a certified information privacy professional and certified information privacy manager. And I was accredited fellow of information privacy by the International Association of Privacy Professionals early this month. I deal with data governance, data protection, and privacy related issues, artificial intelligence governance, and internet governance.
And you already made a bit of a presentation for me, but I work for Globe Educate, and Globe Educate is a organization with 68 schools across the world on 4 continents. It is a very complex ecosystem. We have our youngest student 6 months old, and our oldest are adult students who are in the vocational programs. And so we have a lot of focus on how we can integrate AI. We were the first school organization in the world to have a head of AI in the position that I am in, and we have had the approach from the beginning that we wanted to integrate generative AI into our ecosystem in a safe way, in an effective way, in a way that makes education better, increases the quality, and support our teachers. And so my focus is on that, along with keeping an eye on the policies and the regulations that are coming in the near future, and how to continue to stay ahead of the development and making the right decisions, both for our hardware and the software that we use to deploy AI.
It seems that there's an audio problem. Let's see if we can troubleshoot that. Yeah. If you'd like to take a moment, Sharola. But it's a pleasure to have you, Awar and Clara and Sharola. It's a very diverse, but still harmonious set of perspectives that we have on the table. Are are you able to configure the microphone settings for your computer, Sharola?
Just a minute, let me see what I can.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Now we can hear you.
Okay.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Oh no, there's a slight audio delay.
Let me transfer my laptop.
Copy that. Okay. So while we iron out the wrinkles of technical issues, let's discuss the privacy issues. So what are some? Let's just kick it off. What are some reasonable regulations from a government body that that impact the space of or field of AI?
So shall I hop on? Shall I take a bite out of that one? I guess
Yes.
I can tell the listeners and viewers out there that we had a little chance to chat about this before we went live, but we had some news in the world of regulations today, because in Strasbourg, the Council of Europe adopted the EU AI Act, which is going to be the first international legally binding treaty. And the EU AI Act is focused on both us respecting human rights, the rule of law, and democracy, and setting legal standards. And so what that means for all of us is that if we are inside of the EU, or if we are deploying, developing, or using AI-driven technology within the EU AI Act, we will now have some regulations. The next question then is, are they reasonable? And I try to think about the regulation that is the number one most important one for me, and also for our organization. We work with children, and so the first thing for us is always a question about safety. What are reasonable regulations around safety? And there I think that it is reasonable to establish standards for AI systems to be reliable and safe, so that we know that they will prevent harm and unintended consequences for children. Systems often are not built with children in mind. That is not the first point of innovation, the question about how can we make a system that's safe for children, it seems to be the last question. And we learned that with social media. But I think that we've seen enough accidents, we've seen enough harm from something like social media to learn that safety standards should be the starting point. And in order for us to ensure that that happens, I believe we have to have regulation to support that.
I agree with you on the safety aspect. So definitely, reasonable regulations must cater to safety and security. And as speaking now as a privacy expert, again, reasonable regulations that governments decide to implement in their respective countries must address the issue of data protection and privacy. So many a times you'll find that artificial intelligence, the models are trained on data. So what are the measures? What data are you using to train these AI models? Are they personal data relating to specific data subjects? Can a bad actor use an AI output to identify a data subject? So privacy for me is very fundamental. It's a key principle that has to be in whichever regulation that AI developers, researchers, deployers, and users keep in mind. Again, speaking to privacy, of course, in data protection and privacy, we have this thing called privacy by design. So essentially what that means is that from the very onset of developing these AI systems, we must keep in mind privacy. So from the time the researchers are doing research on whatever model they want to develop, to deploying developing the AI, deploying the AI, monitoring and evaluating up to the disassembly and termination of AI, data protection and privacy has to be central in that.
Thank you for that. Sharola, can you hear us? Can you talk with us?
And
I hope
speaking,
so.
Yes. Okay. Would you like to rewind and just give a little bit of introduction as to who you are, your background, and your law practice?
Well, I don't know whether you can hear me
you
Perfect.
can
now.
100%.
Okay, so my name is Sharola Odipo, and by profession, I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I'm very familiar with one Jane Awor Ombiro. Yes, we have interacted on different platforms. And I am the founder and president of Women in Artificial Intelligence Africa, and also founder and CEO of EvaCare. So initially, when I started this journey, I've always wanted to be a lawyer by profession, but there's this interest in the technical space that I've always had, and I got exposed to. So now I was trying to find a way to intersect the two. And finally, I got it. I discovered that there is gross misrepresentation. Very many women out here are not being embraced in the technical space. And I tried to see how we can find, that delicate balance and bridge the gap, and just uplift women, empower them, help them to upskill, help them to develop capacity and be recognized in this space, because we really do have women who are very brilliant, both in the technical and in the non-technical spaces, and it's about time. So that is what gave birth to First Women in AI Africa, which is a nonprofit organization, and then subsequently EvaCare, which is a for-profit company that basically is an AI companion that helps women through the fertility journey into pregnancy and early parenthood. So basically is a tool for women by women. Yes.
And with the initial question that we asked was, what are some reasonable regulations from a government body when it comes to AI? And we mentioned upon the EU AI Act. So would you like to give a response to that?
Yes, yes, yes. The EU took an approach that was basically risk based, where you have these systems that are in the finance section, the healthcare section, the criminal justice section, that we feel like are very high risk, and they came with this approach that is from the apex to the base. So depending on the type of risk that is there, they were able to prioritize, systems and developments that need urgent and immediate attention. And they were able to formulate regulation and policies to govern that as a matter of urgency, and then trickle down to the rest that are upcoming and that are developing. And you see, like, let's say in Africa, we're just coming up. So it would be nice to borrow from what the more developed countries have experienced, what they have learned through the process, and what they have been able to bring together as regulation for the same. So, yeah, I think that is one of the things that we could borrow, the high risk based or the risk based kind of approach. And we could use that to learn a thing or two here and there. And also, we should, governments, or when we are formulating regulations, we should consider transparency and explainability. These systems that we are coming up with, how much autonomy are we giving them? you know how much responsibility are we according the actors that are interacting with these systems across the line? I feel like that is something we need to look at, even as we're coming up with regulations, as our governments are coming up with regulations, as they're coming up with ways to ensure that there is data privacy and security. They say that data is the blood of AI, as blind is to the human body. So how much are we protecting data? How much control do we have over data? Are these systems well trained? Are they not? What are the risks that are involved with the data that we are collecting? Do we have consent? There is so much that is involved. And I feel like the government needs to work together with the private sector, and just come up with well-informed, well-rounded decisions, consider algorithms and how they're being developed. How are they able to mitigate these algorithms as they're being developed? What is the demography of everyone that is involved in developing all these things? So yeah, I feel like all these factors come hand in hand when it comes to regulation and governance. Thank you, Akin.
You're very welcome. And that is an excellent segue to the next question. What are some reasonable enforcement measures? I mean, we're talking about risk-based approach and tackling the bigger actors that have a more disproportionate effect on society. How do we ensure that people are not tempted to take the shortcuts and line their pockets?
Well, Jen.
Actually, I just wanted to comment on something you mentioned, that as Africans, we need to borrow. I think then if we're borrowing, then we need to borrow within reason, because you look at the EU, they've taken the risk-based approach. You come to the UK, they're more pro innovation. They don't even want to regulate AI because they're still monitoring. They want to harness the full capabilities of artificial intelligence. You go to the US, I think the US is also doing some pro innovation, trying to understand the best way to regulate artificial intelligence. And us here in Africa, these people, the big nations are taking different approaches to regulating AI. So when we are borrowing, then we have to do it within reason, and something that is going to, again, foster innovation and protects the issues to do with transparency, privacy, security, and centering humans throughout the life cycle of these AI systems and models.
I will hop in and take a bite on the question that you had, Joachim, because we did just before we went live. We also talked and we had a little bit of a laugh about enforcement measures, and we talked about whether penalty for non-compliance is an option, and we had a bit of a laugh because we talked about how it appears that some companies may have budgeted for being non-compliant, and whether that could be a part of your business strategy to set some money aside for paying fees. And I think with the EU AI Act, one of the things that we see is that the potential monetary penalty for non-compliance is quite high. Possibly not high enough to have a real impact on the big tech companies, but it could have an opposite effect on the smaller organizations and upstarts who may not be able to completely have the front end investment necessary in order to be compliant, because that in itself is expensive. But I think two reasonable enforcement measures that I believe are not just reasonable but also useful is the regular audits. I think a lot happens for an organization when you run an audit. When you run an audit on your AI systems, how they are used, where they're used, who is using them, what data is being collected using those systems, and how are they making processes more or less efficient, what risks is involved with that. Not only does it help you maintain continuous compliance, it also helps optimize the decisions you're making for your business. And I think parallel with that, public reporting. We've heard lots of discussion about open source and how that is wonderful for innovation. But less willingness to share AI practices and compliance statuses on the back end. But I think that I think that transparency is important, and I think that, as Sharola also mentioned, with transparency, what we get when we report AI practices is also a visibility of whether they are designing towards compliance and operating towards compliance. So I think those two, for me, are the ones that stick out as reasonable in enforcement measures.
For me, reasonable, definitely the penalties should match the impact of whatever system it is that has maybe hallucinated or gone rogue. And again, I feel like regulators should work very closely with the developers and the deployers. So it shouldn't just be them coming and just finding, there has to be that sort of collaboration between the developers and the regulators, because again, the regulators are there to serve, to assist with these compliance issues, because this is something we're all still trying to understand. So them working closely and giving assistance where necessary is very fundamental.
Yeah, okay. I think I completely agree with having a scale-based enforcement. Of course, the ratio has to match depending on the type of risk that is involved and the type of impacts that the risk is bound to create, And also, just to add on to that, I do believe in apportioning liability across the actors, across the life cycle, from the individuals who are collecting data, to the individuals creating the algorithms, to programmers, all the way consumers, all the way. There should be some level of liability. There should be some level of responsibility that is apportioned to everyone, depending on their interaction with these systems that we have. And also, we have this fellowship class that we are attending with Awar, and one of the classes they brought about the idea of having a sun for AI, which is very controversial, but I don't know. They're saying that there should be maybe oversight bodies that are independent in nature and that ensure that there are checks and balances all across the board to ensure that humans still remain in charge and have this supervisory role and responsibilities, and still, retain the autonomy that is required to ensure that there is that delicate balance between embracing technology and ensuring that it is well governed and it is very ethical in nature. Yes.
I'm hearing things that I really like. You should pay a fine according to the level of severity of your crime, or malintent, or even gross incompetence, right? Sometimes you may have unintended consequences that can affect the lives or livelihoods of people. And even though it's not a direct, misintent, it's still something that impacts people in the real world. Um, However, I'm also hearing having a CERN or having the wild, wild west of AI, there's a huge spectrum in between, and all these different environments, physical, geolocation, schools of thought, they also represent that spectrum of ideas because we have to think about where it's important to employ this in a way where we can learn how to reason with it and how to use it for real world projects, as well as, if this is going to be something that has gross impact on a large set of people, how do we ensure that privacy and safety and responsibility and transparency and trust are at the forefront of the design? Um, so let's talk about a little bit of how do we keep that balance, safety and innovation.
That I'll hop on that. Because I think today has been a good one in the news, because not only did we get the EU AI Act, but we also had a shift again in OpenAI, that their chief technology officer and chief machine learning officer resigned from their positions at OpenAI.
Yes.
And and it's a bit like the big tech version, I think, of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but it's not Botox and plastic surgery, though. This is really powerful technology. And earlier today, I was sitting there sort of thinking about this question, like, how do we keep the balance? And I think the balance has tipped immensely towards innovation. And I've been sort of wondering for a long time where our regulators have been in all of this. And I picked up two pieces that I thought I would just wanted to share with you today, that I found on OpenAI's own website. So in July 5th, 2023, so less than a year ago, they wrote a blog called Introducing Super Alignment. And I'm paraphrasing, but essentially what they write is the vast power of super intelligence could also be very dangerous and could lead to the disempowerment of humanity or even human extinction. And then they go on to say, we believe that super intelligence will arrive this decade. And then they say, managing these risks will require new institutions for governance and solving the problem of super intelligence alignment. How do we ensure that AI systems that are smarter than humans follow us? Currently, we don't have a solution for steering or controlling a potential super intelligent AI and preventing it from going rogue. And on February 24, 23, they very quietly, it wasn't published anywhere sort of in the news, but they very quietly moved from focusing on developing generative AI to shifting their focus to AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. So these are systems that are significantly smarter than human beings. And there they also write, and it's still right on their website, that they acknowledge that AGI will come with serious risk of misuse, drastic accidents, and societal disruption. And then my almost favorite part, if it wasn't so terrifying that OpenAI are developing this technology, they write, but we think the upside is so great, it's not possible or desirable to stop it. And the developers of AGI will have to figure out how to get it right. And so far, I think for anyone who has been following the movements of and the governance of OpenAI in the last 12 months alone, should be not sleeping at night, wondering where are our governance, where are our politicians. I think if I was the president of a country and I was reading that a company is developing a technology that they don't know how to manage, they believe it can go rogue and it could be leading to human extinction, I don't think that I would be sleeping at night. But so I think that how do we strike a balance? We need more governance and less freedom of these huge tech companies to simply do what they want to do.
Well, that sounds interesting. So, striking a balance between safety and privacy. Well, for me, privacy is definitely non-negotiable. I am a privacy champion, a privacy expert, and privacy is one of those inherent human rights that we cannot negotiate about, unless, of course, limited under certain circumstances. But ideally, privacy when they're developing, deploying these systems. In fact, like I'd mentioned earlier, privacy by design. When from the very onset of the life cycle of these AI systems, it has to embed privacy. They have to incorporate privacy. And I don't think incorporating privacy really stifles innovation per se. There's a whole topic, there's a whole dissertation on that it does not stifle innovation. So incorporating privacy from the design stage all the way to the termination of the AI system is very pertinent, mandatory, and to me, it's not non-negotiable. All right, because ideally, when we speak of privacy by design, it means that whatever system that is out there, whatever AI model that has been put out there, should not be able to function if it does not cater to privacy. If my privacy is not guaranteed, if there's no guarantee that my personal data is going to be protected, then ideally that system should not function.
It's very interesting. We are talking about the balance between, innovation and regulation, and we are discussing the possibility of public-private partnerships, and we are discussing how we can come up with proper open dialogue where the stakeholders who are very active in the innovative space can work together with governments to come up with proper, inclusive, ethical regulation with data privacy and everything. And I appreciate, with the growth of development, we've seen aspects like Web 3.0 that will go a long way in maybe trying to help with privacy, reducing the middlemen and everything. And I don't know how far that will go, especially considering the big tech muscles that are always working towards ensuring that decentralization does not take place. But I do agree that there needs to be involvement, proper participation between the public and the private sectors, just to ensure that we do not stifle the innovation, but at the same time, we ensure that it is well regulated.
Yeah, for sure. There is this spectrum that we have to navigate. I mean, we want people to be free actors, free agents in the market to create better solutions, better products and services, more efficient usage of food supply chains, better healthcare systems that are lower cost and equitable. Um, there's a ton of education that is personalized and caters to special needs and individual interests. There's so many different use cases that can be unlocked, but privacy, safety, responsibility, explainability, all these things need to come first. Um, so how do we ensure that we can quickly check in to make sure that even if you are early stage or developing something, that companies that are private, fledgling entrepreneurs can have the resources and the audit, some sort of third party check in to ensure that they're doing the right thing or at least attempting to abide by some ethical standards?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I attend conferences, among other things, edu-tech conferences, because education is big business for tech companies, right? And I meet a lot of startup companies that are trying to present their innovative solutions and justify their solutions. And I always ask every single one of them the same question: tell me how you thought safety into designs, privacy protection for the children who cannot give consent, privacy protection for our teachers who have to or will be asked to use these systems and therefore really can't give consent either. And tell me about that process. And every single company struggles with giving me a proper answer. I only had one really good answer. He said, well, no children are allowed to use it. So we didn't think about it at all. But I think when it comes to issues of how do we pull this off? How do we ensure that there is compliance? I think a starting and make sure that it's designed with privacy and safety in mind. I think we could start with the stakeholders. It's amazing how much technology is being developed where the end users are not being asked to participate in the design process. And I see this all the time when it comes to children. When I sit children down and I ask them to give me feedback on some of the tech that they use, it's just incredible to see what kind of feedback they have and things that I myself certainly would have never thought of. And clearly the innovators of the technology also had not thought of. What are the actual needs when we're out there? So I think one example you give, Joachim, is the promise of individualized education. But what does that really mean for the child? We think it's a solution to a lot of things, and it sounds great. But early research has already shown us that students are reporting that they like to learn better with individualized AI-driven technology, but they feel more lonely. And so we have a solution that seems to be doing something, but the user isn't getting the experience that's really actually desirable for them, because the last thing we need our children to be is to be more lonely. And I think that a good starting point, certainly from my perspective, when it comes to educational technology development, is AI youth councils. Bring in the users, the child users of the technology, see what they need, see what they want, and make them part of the solution. As adults, we're so used to fixing things for children. This is a problem that children have to be part of fixing. And so we need to get them on board very early on in the process and really build a bridge with them in constant communication about what they experience, what they are seeing. We are changing their very basis of the foundation of human life for them. And just as privacy is a human right, I think the right to participate in the dialogue about development of technology is a child right.
Yeah, it really is. My question to you, Clara. So do you think, speaking on compliance, do you think we can trust the developers and the deployers to self-regulate as we all try to, especially for countries like Africa, myself, in Kenya, we're still trying to figure out the best approach to sort of govern artificial intelligence. So in the meantime, do you think we can really trust these guys to self-regulate?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you're making my philosophical background brain go into full alert, because I think that humans are corruptible, right? Even the most well-intentioned human is corruptible, and I think that there is a big corruptor called money, and money has a way of talking to other sensibilities than the ethical ones. So no, I don't think that we can entirely rely on developers to self-regulate. I wish we could, but safety, as you mentioned, although there's research out there to support that, protecting privacy and building safety into design in itself is profitable. The incentive simply isn't strong enough. So I do think that we need to have audit type systems, that we do need to have oversight systems in place in order to ensure that everybody is playing in the same ball game, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that one.
I think in a broad way, in a very let me just say generic way, good is when you provide value
Before we
for.
proceed, Sharola sends her regrets. They're having a bit of technological and electricity challenges at the where she is, so she's really sorry.
We'll just have to do another one. That's not a problem.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, good is when something or someone contributes to a collective, provides something of help. But when you look at the bad, it's a very selfish intent where you take actions at the expense of that collective. So, creativity is a neutral force that harnesses, intent and ideas and the ether. But the way that force may impact others can be good or bad. Um, so understanding how to provide some guidelines or some guidance to that force preemptively, literacy or a primer or some sort of a guideline, that would be I think a stepping stone into taking that correct direction. But we cannot reasonably expect that a painter will only paint good things. We cannot expect a builder to only build good things, or any other kind of expression of this idea. A developer who creates artificial intelligence or software can create good or bad. Um, so my question is, any thoughts on ensuring that innovation is not stifled, but rather just guided in the positive or neutral way?
Or you want to go first, or?
You can just go first.
All right.
Sorry.
So I think that there's a couple of things that comes to mind for me. So I think one of them, and we've heard a lot of conversation about that as part of the development of the EU AI Act as well, is adaptive regulations. We're just at the beginning of seeing what advanced AI technology can do. We're heading towards quantum computing as well. So in 10 years, things are going to look very differently. So we really need regulatory frameworks that are flexible, that can adapt to these technological advancements, while not hindering necessary innovation as well. And then I think something that we don't talk enough about is the need to support research. We know that research already is being done. We don't have a lot of it, but as Awar points out, we can use that to guide us towards finding a balance where we're not stifling innovation. So provide funding, resources for AI research, development, and encouraging ethical in innovation, maybe even incentivize it, I think is a way to go about it. And I think then last not least, of course, this is already something that I mentioned, open dialogue. We need to have regulators and industry experts talking. We have seen that they have been talking, but we don't have enough forums where the public is involved. We have seen closed forums between regulators and industry experts, and it's disheartening. We need many more forums where the public is involved, and very importantly, we need our youth involved and invited to these forums, so that we can balance innovation with the ethical considerations that involve all of the stakeholders that are living with these uniquely social technologies and not just advanced technologies. So I think that would be my perspective on that.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiments fully. The regulations need to be adaptable, flexible, because like I think when we were having our discussions prior to going live, we talked about AI constantly evolving. Tomorrow we wake up, there's something new that has been discovered in the field of AI, or the AI has gained other capabilities that were not there prior. So we need regulations that actually accommodate and are flexible and can catch up with the developments in the artificial intelligence field. Again, this, as much as they're adaptable, they also need to be consistent. The developers need to know, like, this is what is regulating us. These are the laws that we need to adhere to, not wake up the next day and find that something significant has changed. So adaptability and consistency in the way that artificial intelligence is regulated is very fundamental when it comes to innovation.
Awar, I would love to call on your expertise in privacy to think through what would be an ideal sort of framework or guideline for having privacy first or having responsibility first.
Privacy has always been first. If you look at the EU GDPR, if you look at the Kenya Data Protection Act, if you look at the various data protection regulations, they speak to privacy by design. So of course, and remember, when we are regulating artificial intelligence, it's not regulated in a vacuum. All the other legislation still come at play. So if you're developing something, you're bound by the EU AI Act. You're also bound by the General Data Protection Regulation and other laws that affect your operations. So like I mentioned, privacy by design, it's in the GDPR. So just complying with the GDPR, when you're complying with that privacy by design requirement, then your systems will inherently put data protection and privacy at a forefront.
Privacy, data protection, cybersecurity are looming threats for healthcare, for what is it? Public infrastructure, public utilities, water management, energy management. What are some other areas that may potentially be affected by this? I mean, there's so many.
Yeah.
Financial institutions. Yeah, it's important to keep this in the frame of mind that any of these industries are vulnerable and should have professionals such as yourself to help guide or at least provide some sort of third party perspective on how to navigate this complex, multi-layer, and dynamic issue or broader domain of knowledge. So I'll ask you both, what is the way that we can navigate this as an individual? What are your viewpoints as to how we can educate ourselves to be proactive in this new world?
Well, so I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is we have a lot of parents or guardians around the world who are responsible for children, and I think that what can they do as individuals to navigate this complex world, because we live in a world where if we look back in time to the global pandemic, outside of the disasters that were taking place in families and in countries because of this horrendous virus, we also saw that tech companies were quick to offer solutions to help schools, for example, to help families continuing with their education during the time of the pandemic. And we have since learned that the same very friendly, we offer our services for free, tech companies were also putting trackers on children's devices, were scraping up all of the data and using it to train AI and other matters. And so I think that if I could go back in time and say to parents, yes, we have your child at home, and yes, we want them to have education, but if they are logging on to a online classroom, or if they're on a video call with this company or that company, they are giving up their privacy, and when they log off, they are continuously surrendering their privacy. I think every parent would have said, I absolutely do not want that for my child. Then better to do like some countries did, have a national educational program where children can turn on the television and watch it there. But parents didn't know, schools didn't know, everybody was in a state of panic and very reactive. And I'm sure companies like Awar and certainly persons like me were yelling, stop. But right? But the truth is that we have not had our last pandemic. Everybody that works with these pandemics say some very aggressive estimates are saying within the next couple of years. Some are saying maybe within the next decade. But shall we do this again then? Surrender all of our privacy for some other good? I don't think so. So I think that, we're in an incredibly complex environment. When we started with social media and Google in schools 20 years ago, we have to remember we also started with a generation of parents who had no idea about AI, the benefits and risk of AI. We've seen our parents give their children phones and computers and put them on social media without understanding the reason for boundaries in terms of age and type of media that children should be exposed to, because these parents had no one to ask. When my children were little and I needed advice, I could call my grandmother and she could give me advice because she had generational knowledge from her mother who had it from her mother. But we are dealing with a generation of parents who literally have no idea what to do. So they've been winging it, so to speak. And now we have an enormous responsibility to really support our parents to develop a healthy perspective on AI so that they can educate their own children at home on the benefits and potential risks, so that they can help prepare the children for a future that is really deeply immersed with AI technology and will also be further pushed and developed due to developments in quantum computing. So we have to put in our efforts around the parental group.
Yeah, just be involved. For me, the personal initiative I'm taking, it's just being involved, constantly checking what's happening in terms of regulation and in terms of also the technical aspects of artificial intelligence. So it's good for you as an individual to know, to understand, these systems that you're going to use. I think there's AI in my phone. The phones we use, this artificial intelligence. So just being involved and having a basic understanding of the technical aspects behind artificial intelligence. Oh, and reading the fine prints before, I believe also reading the fine prints before you download that software or that AI chat box or whatever it is. You have to read the fine print so that you know when you're giving out your privacy, the information that the system is going to take from you, how it's going to use that information.
I
Yeah,
think I think social media has given you lots of work, a war, because a lot of people don't like to read. They just listen to TikTok and Instagram and listen to Spotify. You're in a really good place, having to read those 500-page documents.
terms and conditions and privacy policies and notices. It's good to read and to understand when you're giving out, your information and the type of information, how they're going to use that. So that you can, even as a user, you need to be able to understand so that you can also exercise your right. Should anything happen, then you're in a better place to exercise your rights.
Awar, you mentioned that in some aspects within your realm as a head of data protection for Southend Tech Limited, you act as a fractional chief privacy officer. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the responsibilities and uh, elements that you have to navigate in that kind of capacity?
So, as a privacy officer, ideally, what I do, I help companies comply with the relevant data protection laws. And I believe when we started, we mentioned how that these laws, as much as they're enacted in the EU, like the GDPR and the EU AI Act, they have that overreaching effect, meaning I can be here in Kenya and GDPR is applicable to me, or the EU AI Act governs what I'm doing in terms of AI and AI related issues. So what I do is I assist companies to comply with the relevant data protection laws that affect their operations. We do privacy trainings, ensuring that processes have, privacy by design, meaning from the onset of these project systems, softwares, privacy has been adhered to.
What are some of the observations or patterns that you've seen from delivering these trainings? What are some of the areas that people have blind spots or that they don't know about?
Actually, speaking here a lot, because like I mentioned earlier, our Data Protection Act was enacted in 2019. So the companies, you'd find the companies I'm dealing with do not even know that we have this legislation that governs how they process personal data. So for me, I believe it's a lot that they don't know, and if they know, it's a bit on the basics on the legal aspect, but not so much on the information security aspect of it, because we need information security to secure our digital personal data. So it's a lot that they don't know, and they don't know that they don't know. So that's also a challenge.
Clara, you're on the other side of this coin where you are entrusted with the impact of 40,000 students. So, what are some of the key considerations that you hold in your hand and in your mind before you go to bed, and the first thing that you think about when you get your day started?
Safety. It's first and last for me. It's how in the world do we integrate these advanced technologies with all of the push factors, with all of the disruption, with the lack of regulation to protect us? How do I push this into to schools in a way that our children are safe using these technologies, in a way that our teachers are safe deploying the technologies in the classroom? And it is enormously complex. We face everything from kids using advanced deepfake technology tools for fun and really causing significant harm, to teachers bringing in generative AI technology and having children sign in that are too young to sign in because they don't know that there is an age compliance that they need to adhere to understanding complexities around where the data goes when you use it and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate use, and to how can I get the children to learn how to become AI literate and prepared for this complex future without having available to me an AI tool, a generative AI tool, where I feel completely confident that the child will be safe in the output and that they can't quite easily get around what little safe rails that have been built into design. And that does keep me up at night. I worry about the things that the children are already seeing. It can be relatively innocent things, but I can give you an example of one story of many that I have heard. This was a mother who's also a teacher in one of our schools, and she has a daughter, 10 years old, who likes to go on generative AI to experiment with prompting for hairstyles. And when she prompts in the hairstyle, a little 10-year-old girl with light skin and blue eyes show up. And this girl is of African descent, so she doesn't match the description of this little girl. And her daughter has learned at 10 years old that if she wants to work with generative AI and she wants a response that represents her reality, she has to go that extra step and make a very detailed description of herself. Otherwise, the systems default to the white prototype and the white reality, and for adults to the white male reality. And our children are seeing this. They've already lived with this through their Google searches for 20 years without teachers and students really understanding what was happening. Now we see it play out with generative AI. That in itself is a safety issue because it's pushing and pulling at our social fabric. Add to that then that the jobs that will be first displaced by AI are held by women and minorities. So we both see a realistic push of women and minorities out of the workforce, and a generative AI who's recreating this narrative. So I worry about these types of things a great deal. So both the technical aspects and the actual social aspects, and the corresponding rights and indignities that will follow from all of those. That keeps me up at night.
That's really heavy.
I appreciate you you all taking the time to sit with me here and have an open discussion around these very timely and I'd like to say modern concepts, but although they are not modern inherently in philosophy and all these ideas, human rights, privacy, equitable representation and the society that we want to live in. I appreciate you being able to bring in the context of your respective domains of expertise and of your countries. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I think conversations such as these are a start. Um, Perhaps we should consider, as we employ doctors, as we employ lawyers that require a certain level, certain body of knowledge of ethics, for people that want to get into software or AI engineering to also follow a certain regiment or guideline of ethics as well. Just throwing that out there, you guys gave me a lot of food for thought. Do you have any last words that you'd like to impart with the audience?
Well, for me, thank you so much for making the time again and for organizing this wonderful forum. My thoughts, my last final thoughts would be definitely developers, deployers, researchers of artificial intelligence must integrate privacy by design and human centricity by design. So human centricity definitely will deal with the issues of safety that keep Clara up at night.
And I think my final words would be the same that I tell the students, that I tell teachers and senior leadership in school and our executive team, is that we are learning partners. Let's think of each other as learning partners. Really across the globe, I have learned today from being with you, and we live in a future that require all of us to become humble and be lifelong learners. We are, none of us are at an end destination in our learning journey. We are partners in this. We have to help each other. We have to share knowledge, the knowledge that we do have. And I think something like this, Joachim, an initiative that you've done is exactly a testament. I am very grateful that we are assembled here, and I encourage many more of these sharing of knowledge and ideas for us to continue this journey together. So thank you again for that, and thank you, Awori. You're brilliant. It's just a joy to be with you today.
You too, Clara. Thank you. Thank you for the compliments.
Thank you all for watching, and have a great rest of your day.
You too.